morning. My name is Lindsay, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Integrating SAP ERP Systems into Enterprise Architecture conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. Kathy Mara, you may begin your conference.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you all for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I am the Channel Program Manager for the ERwin Modeling Solutions. As there seems to be a lot of big news coming out of the UK lately, we decided to join in as we think we have a medal-worthy discussion to share with you all. So our first speaker is going to be Jean Ashby, who's going to speak from RS Components on her success in implementing CA ERwin and CA ERwin SAFYR option. Once she concludes, we'll hand it over to Terry Hanks, who can show you the product demonstration firsthand so you can get a better idea of what our solution can do for you. At the end, we will have live Q&A, so by all means, you can feel free to type your questions throughout the session as they are top of mind, or the operator, as she said, will open up the lines at the end and you can ask those questions live. So at this time, I'd like to hand the call over to Jean Ashby, who we truly appreciate sharing her successful story with you. Jean, you can speak now.
Okay, thanks very much, Kathy. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining in. As Kathy said, my name is Jean Ashby. I work for a company called RS Components in the UK, and I've been with them for 24 years. I've always been in IT, primarily focusing on data-related matters, data migration, management, data quality, and more recently, data governance. I'm going to talk to you today about how we've been using CA ERwin data modeling software with the Saphir option to create our own data models. So first of all, a little bit about RS Components, which is a trading brand of Electrocomponents PLC. Now, Electrocomponents, which was founded in 1937, is the world's leading high-service distributor of electronics and maintenance products. We have our headquarters in Oxford, UK. The company is listed on the London Stock Exchange, and at the end of this financial year, in March 2012, had revenues of £1.27 billion, and 70% of that comes from outside of the UK. Now, Electrocomponents operates under the trading brands of RS Components and Allied Electronics in North America. We have 32 operating companies around the world, and we've got a presence in a further 37 countries through distributors. And Electrocomponents employs 6,000 people worldwide. Okay, some slides here, a little bit about the company. We've got a product range of about 550,000 products in our offer. We've got over 1 million customers worldwide. We operate out of 17 distribution centres. We're supplied by 2,500 vendors. We've got 60 local websites, and most of which are in local language. And these websites get about 6 million visits a month. And daily we ship 46,000 parcels. Okay, so what our situation and challenges are in RS. About 2 years ago, an enterprise architecture team was established within the GIS department, and that incorporated data architecture, which is the area I was working in. And one of the first things that the data architecture function had to do was to produce as-is versions of our current data models. Now, we chose an ERwin as a software package for data modeling. I was fairly familiar with it and used it before some years previously with RS. Our European business system is SAP, but it's quite a heavily customized version. And that we have a current project in place to replace our JDE systems, which operate in our Asia Pacific countries over the next 2 years. Now, our version of SAP contains about 117,000 tables. It's far too big to reverse engineer, so we decided that we needed to break down these tables into manageable functions and create specific data models to suit our business. In our Asia Pacific regions, we've got 4 different versions of JDE, and we found that there are no inbuilt relationships between the tables. So, how are we getting our data models? Well, we're combining our own technical knowledge of the SAP and JDE systems with Saphir functionality to help us build these models. Okay, so the aims and objectives for using ERwin and Saphir together. For the SAP data models, we needed to gain insight and understanding of the data model in our SAP 4.6C system. This is a system that supports our business, and we needed to include the numerous table and attribute customizations. We've since upgraded our system to ECC 6. We're aware of a few changes in the database, so very shortly we'll be comparing our current models to the new upgraded version so that we can catch anything new. We also needed to cut through the complexity of the full SAP data model and focus in on the key subject areas. So these are the important areas, the actual areas that are used by RS. To give you some examples, that's purchasing, the article master, order processing and pricing, plus many, many, many more. These models then enable IT colleagues to better engage in data-related discussions with the business users by showing them logical entity relationship models and the business metadata behind them. We're also using these models to create anchor models for the development of logical domain models for the wider enterprise architecture team and also enterprise conceptual models. And as far as the JDE data models are concerned, you may wonder why we're bothering to create data models when we're moving our JDE systems to SAP, but we needed to gain insight and understanding of the data model in the JDE systems in the Asia Pacific region. We didn't have any good documentation, and most of the knowledge of these systems is in the heads of a few individuals within the business. So we needed to do a little bit more there. We also wanted to accelerate our knowledge of the data structures to allow us to progress with the data migration work streams as we're preparing to implement SAP in this region. And that is something that's ongoing. We have actually started with the first region. Okay, I'm going to show you a very quick overview of one of the models that we created, which was for the SAP pricing model. And the reason I've chosen SAP pricing to demonstrate is there are many tables involved. That's in getting the right price onto a customer order. I know from experience that reports and queries are very complex to build in SAP. Pricing is one component of SAP's condition record processing. If anyone's familiar with SAP, you'll understand probably what I mean there. Condition processing in SAP is highly configurable. It covers selling prices, cost prices, discounts, promotional pricing, and many, many other types of pricing and financial related information. we needed to understand how the sell prices were derived. It was one of the initial as-is data models that I talked of previously that we created under our part of the data architecture team. Okay, not sure if you can see this very well. You may need to go into full screen mode. But this is the model that we came up with. I won't go into it in detail, but basically it shows us how the SAP condition parameters, which is a set of tables that hold the parameters like the sales organisation, the article numbers, the customer numbers if it's a customer-specific price, and also validity dates. And then that links into another set of tables which hold the actual prices and discounts and financial information for a condition. That all passes to pricing procedure data, which decides on the sequence that multiple conditions can be applied in. And all these tables are involved in getting prices from the conditions, or from the article master really, through the conditions onto the sales order. So how do we get to that model? Well, we have to start building on what we already know. We already knew how to extract base selling prices from SAP, and we know those queries are based on 3 SAP tables, which I've listed here. We also know that the final invoice price gets onto our order detail file for the customer. So what we're looking to do is to find the tables and relationships that link all these together. So let's see what Saphir tells us about these tables. So first of all, in Saphir, we need to start building up knowledge of the tables that we want in our model. And to do this, we have something called a subject area. Now, a subject area is really a holding area where we will add the tables that we're interested into. We create a new subject area, and then we just add the tables in that we've discovered along the way. Here I've created one called pricing structure. Then we go into functionality in Saphir called the model overview. This is quite a powerful piece of functionality. It allows you to enter a table name. So we would enter one of the table names that we know we want in our model. In the demo here, I've just put in the order detail file. And then Saphir will give us the number of parent tables that this table is related to and the number of child tables. And then we can list those, we can look through them and see, well, what are all these relationships in these tables? And it really is a case of just working our way through all of these tables and finding those that are relevant to the model that we're trying to create. And then when we find tables that are relevant, we repeat the process and look at those tables to find out anything else any other relationships that we think are relevant. And then we move all of these tables, so the ones that we know of to begin with, and the ones that we've discovered, we keep moving those into the subject area that we're building up. In this screen, it's really just showing how we've discovered a table that we didn't know about before, and now we're doing more discovery on that table, again through the Saphir model overview. And we're finding more and more tables that we're interested in and we want in our model. So at the end of all this, when we think we've got all the tables we need, we can then create an ERwin data model. And we do this by using the Saphir export data model functionality. we choose the subject area that we want to export, and we also select the type of ERwin version we're using and the notation we want to use, and we give it a file name. Then what we can do with ERwin, which can be useful, but you have to be a little bit careful with, but we can decide, we can export relationships up a number of levels or down a number of levels. We have to be a little bit careful because you can end up with a lot of tables. As we saw on one of the previous slides, that the table I was looking at had 76 parent relations. So that means that if we went up one level, so if we identified relationships up to one level, we'd get all of those 76 tables within the model. So usually when I've done this, I've just stuck to the tables that I'm interested in and created the model from there. Same is true of the child relationships. But if you're really starting from scratch, and you perhaps don't have the knowledge, then it can be quite useful to include this functionality and perhaps just go up one level, especially if you've only got a small number of tables. And then that's it really. You start the export, and the export will then create a model ready to be reviewed in ERwin. Okay, just a few comments really on how we got started with Saphir. Once we got Saphir installed, there was a one-off task to connect to SAP or JDE systems, and that is to import the SAP or JDE database as a repository into Saphir. And that's a one-off task really. The only time we need to refresh that is if there's been a new release of software, which has involved new tables, or where there's been a change to the database. Now, Saphir is very easy to use and minimal training is required. In fact, I don't think we had any training, probably a few minutes. It is very intuitive, and it was very quick to work out how to use it. What is needed really is a basic knowledge of the SAP and JDE tables in order to start modelling a specific area. Now, Saphir with JDE, I mentioned earlier that JD Edwards systems do not have any inbuilt relationships. So Saphir has to use the naming functionality of the tables to guess the relationships. And occasionally they got them wrong. But there is a simple change that can be made to the Saphir rules that allowed us to reprogram the correct links for second and subsequent JDE models. As I say, we've got 4 regions in our Asia-Pacific JDE systems, and we'll make these changes in the first region, and then when we create the models for subsequent regions, those changes would already be there. Building models for small business areas can be very fast. Missing tables, so if you make your model up and you find you've missed something, all you need to do is add those missing tables to the Saphir subject area, regenerate a new model, and you can use it to either create a new ERwin model or use the ERwin complete compare function to compare the old and the new model and just copy across anything new, which is the approach I've taken and worked with very successfully. And the final models contain all the metadata available from SAP or JD Edwards, and we think that doing this manually is extremely time consuming and would not have been anywhere near as accurate as we got them. So to summarise, at RS Components we're succeeding in getting a level of understanding of data that we didn't think was possible before. We very quickly put together a set of detailed subject area data models which we use to guide project activities. The Saphir models are delivering a level of detail that we would never have expected to achieve without extensive research and work, and a large helping of guesswork as well. We've got a high confidence level in these models because we know that the metadata has come directly from SAP and JD Edwards. And based on the success of Saphir, we're using it now for JD Edwards to accelerate the data mapping and the migration process for our SAP rollout to Asia. And we teamed up with our expert partner, Sandhill Consultants, and this has been a huge effort in helping us with our success story. Okay, so that's it from me. I'm going to hand you back to Kathy. Thank you very much for your time. Over to you, Kathy.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks so much. And at this time, let's show the product in action. So I'd like to introduce Terry Hanks from our pre-sales organization based in Tampa. Terry, can you take it away now?
Yes, thank you, Kathy. This is Terry Hanks, and Jean, very nice. That was very good information. What I'll do now is talk you through some of the point and clicks parts of it, and let me just get my first slide up here. I just have a couple of slides to set up the situation, and then we'll dive into the tool. Okay, so what we're going to look at is something similar to what Jean was just talking about. We wanted to use the Saphir option to get a good in-depth look at our ERP. In this case, we're going to use SAP to take a look at some of the details and how we're going to share this information over with ERwin, and a specific use case and how we'll use this. You could see from Jean's screen that obviously SAP, the names of the tables and the columns and things like that are somewhat cryptic and difficult for business users, of course, let alone data modelers to understand. And so the combination of these two tools will help us make that a little easier, take care of some of the complexity as well. So the scenario that we're going to work with is we have built a data warehouse to support a business intelligence initiative. There are some orders that we have created, and the business has asked us to customize this and add a new field to it. We'll take a look at the report in just a second here. So the field is in SAP that we need to use to create this, and we're not able to see a data model, so what can we do? Well, as Jean had said, we used a combination of the Saphir option and ERwin Data Modeler to easily locate that field, import it into ERwin, and then we're going to use it to map the source to target in the data warehouse model. So this is what the report looks like currently, and pretty straightforward. We just need to add that one column order number and get the report set up, make sure to work with our ETL folks to get the correct data loaded and transformed and cleansed and all that kind of thing. And this is what we want the report to look like when we're done. So this new order number field will be added. I'm now going to share my desktop out, and we'll take a look at the program here. Okay, so you should now see the interface of the Saphir data model browser. If you look up in the upper left-hand corner, it says it there. What we've done prior to this, obviously, is to do the extraction of the application layer of the SAP system and pull this into our repository that we can now browse. As Jean mentioned, SAP can have hundreds of thousands of tables, not really a practical reverse engineer situation, just a lot of information. We need an easy way to browse this and then to use this to help us either demonstrate it in ERwin or to use it, as I'm going to map a source to target field here. So the first thing we see is there is a filter tables by here. This is my browser. You can see there's a search button. If I don't put any filtering in and just hit search, we can see over in the far left all the table names. Again, the kind of cryptic SAP names for the tables, kind of difficult to understand. But what Saphir gives you is the short description field and gives you now more of a business type look, helps you to understand a little more what you're looking at. Over on the right here, it also shows how many child and parent tables are associated with this table. So again, you can see, that none of these have 76 like Jean mentioned. However, that's very realistic. You can see this is a small sample. I only have 89 tables in here. But we're going to take a look at this and let's say, well, I need to find that order number field. That's really, why I'm here. I've already built the rest of my warehouse. I've already, got the information for that. But we need to find that order number. So we go to the short description filter field. We type in order. We hit the search button. And now you can see that this narrows it down to just 2 tables that have order in the short description. The order master table looks like this might be the one to go with, so I'm going to go ahead and just double click on it. And what this does is bring up all of the information for that table. We can see here all of the field names or the columns. We can see the more of a business description over here. We can see that this little F by the key means that's a foreign key. We can see, a primary key or other keys, relationships, etc. Over here in the field details, we see things like the short description, the data type. Here is the actual description or comments that are in SAP that are pulled into Saphir. And let's take a look. We see the second column is called order. That's probably what we're looking for, and sure enough it is. Here's the order number. Here's the description. Here is the data type. And we can see all the details here. So we found the field that we're looking for, and now what we need to do is, as Gene described, create a subject area and export this to ERwin. If I go to the Edit Subject Area wizard here, and we create a new one, we'll call this SAP Order Master, and then we'll just drag this table into the subject area editor, and here we go. We've got it all set up now. Let's close this, and then as you saw from Gene's slides, we can go to an export wizard, and this will walk us through sending this over to ERwin. So I click next, and we'll just remove this other one that we were working with. We'll add that subject area we just created, the SAP Order Master. Drag and drop. We click next, and now you see the fields that Gene described as far as what do we want to export this to, CA ERwin, a CSV file, or comparison file. What version of ERwin are we working with, and what is the notation we prefer. And let me just save this to the desktop here so I make sure I can find it. And we'll call it SAP Order Master again, and save. And when I click next, I get those fields that Gene talked about as far as number of relationships, identifying, non-identifying, parent or child tables. And again, you put in whatever numbers you want here. If you put in 1 or 2 layers, you will get the parents and children at those levels. For today's example, I only need this one table, so I'm going to leave these at 0s. And then I'll do my start export. We can see over here in the left that ERwin is copying one entity with 100 attributes. We can see it shows write to ERwin. We can see it's finished. So we'll click OK. Close this. And then I'm going to minimize Saphir, and we'll go over to ERwin. And let's open up that model we just created first. And here is the table, the subject area I just exported over from Saphir. You see you get a logical physical model. The physical side obviously gives you the SAP names for everything, and the logical side gives you more of the business names. Whether you go into the logical side or the physical side, you can go in and see details and definitions and things like this. So this gives you a data model now that you can then use for whatever purposes you need, whether it's to map something, create a new model, anything like that. You can pull this information over to ERwin. You can have 100 tables. You can have 1 table. Doesn't matter. So let's close this model now. Here's my data warehouse model that I built to help build my data warehouse. And what I need to do first, you can see we have a fact table in the center, a time dimension over here, and other dimensions related to this model. I want to add that new order number column, so I'm just going to click on the order dimension. I'm going to click New, and I'm going to type in order number. And then since this is an Oracle, I'm going to change this to a varchar 212. And I just remember from the screen, that's why I saw that it was a character 12. So I'll add that and close it. And now we see we have the column here. Okay, so now at this point I want to do source to target mapping. So what I do is right click, go to column properties, and make sure we have the correct column selected, order number. And then the tab here called Data Source. This is active only if you turn on the dimensional modeling capabilities of ERwin. So if you had just a regular relational model like a transaction database, you would not see this Data Source tab. But once you turn that feature on, the Data Source tab is active. Here we see we have a choice of Source Editor or Source Selector. I'm going to click Source Selector first just to show you that prior to this we had already imported all these other tables to do our source to target mapping. And you can see that we already actually have that same table in here, but you know, in the real world you would find all these fields and import them as one into ERwin. But just for today's demonstration purposes, we're going to re-import it just to show you how it's done. Okay, so if I go into the data movement editor, and here I want to add a new one. For consistency, we'll just type that in. On the General tab, I mean, you want to put in all of your information that you want to document here as far as the source and the host and things like that. In the data movement table, this allows you to import tables and columns from a CSV file, but in this case I want to import it from that model. So I'm going to click Import Other, and then you see I can import from a file another ERwin model, which is what we're going to use, or a database or script file, or if you had a connection to the ERwin repository or MART, any of those are possible for you to import something in. So we'll click Import. Got to load the model, excuse me. Okay, so let me load that order master model here, and then we'll click Load. Oops, sorry. And Import. There we go. Okay, and now we see the Resolve Differences screen, which is basically the complete compare screen in ERwin. You notice that there are arrows just going left because I can only copy things from the right model here, which is the SAP Order Master, into my data warehouse model. I'm importing. So if I click the arrow to move all this information over to the left or copy it, and then I click Finish to close this, and then we'll close this Order Master model. Now we see we have the data source here. If I click on the table editor, I can now see the columns, the data types, and the definitions that were imported through that process. And now we want to select that as a source to map it. Here is the table I just brought in, and the AUFNR is our order number. So I select that, click OK, and then I perhaps want to document for my ETL person, my design person, move source field to target. Oops, misspelling there, field. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we've documented it. We've successfully mapped this here. We'll click Close to save it. And if I just go back in there and take a look, we see the order number column has that map to it. Now, of course, from this point, you can create quite a few different reports. You can create a diagram report. You can create a physical report. I'm going to actually just create a query here, so I've got this written already. If I click the Query tool, ERwin has its own ODBC driver, so I can connect directly to the model here. And then I have a query set up for source to target mapping. And here you can see there's the syntax that's written to do this. When I click the Execute button, we see now that the order number is in here as well as the other columns that I've already done source to target mapping. We can see the table name, the column name, the data, the source table here. We can see the SAP name here, the data type, and the comments. And of course, then I could save this off to a CSV file to hand off to my ETL people, my reporting people, whoever needs to be involved to make this happen so that we can then get this report set up that the way the business wants to see it, and we'll add that new column order number. So those are the steps you would go through. Very straightforward, very intuitive, very easy to use. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and ask the operator to see if there are any questions. And Kathy, if you'd like to get on and say anything about upcoming webcasts while the operator's collecting any questions, then Jane and I will try and answer those for you. So thank you.
At this time, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad.
Okay, while Lindsay does that, yeah, I wanted to point out a few things. Terry, actually, if you wouldn't mind pointing back to Jean's deck, if anyone would like to print to PDF, you have that capability while those slides are still up there. So the printer icon in your lower right hand can allow you to do so. We also, through the support of Terry, crafted a video that basically is self-contained that goes over what he just showed you. That is located on erwin.com/videos. So if you wanted to see anything in action again, feel free to do so. We are also recording this event, so it will be available for replay within about 24 hours. Upcoming, the month of August is really focused on our ERwin web portal. Ask you to go out to erwin.com/webcasts and check out the overviews and design layer architecture type topics that we have in store for you throughout the month of August. And lastly, we do have World 2012 on the horizon. Right now, only call for speakers are being accepted, but if you are interested in speaking, I greatly encourage you to go out to erwin.com/erworld and submit a call for speakers, and we will be announcing the full agenda on or about September 1st. Before Lindsay says if she has a question or not, I just wanted to read off one that I got. If we have custom fields in SAP, will Saphir recognize those?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay.
Okay. This is Terry, and yes, if you have customization, Saphir will do that. If you saw there was a field that you can do comparison file when you did the export to either ERwin or to a CSV or a comparison file. So if you upgrade to a newer version, you have some customizations done, that comparison file is kind of like a complete compare in ERwin in that you can do a secondary extraction and then see the differences between those extractions. To my knowledge, you should be able to see any of the customized fields. Jean, if you have different information or have something you can mention, please jump in.
You're absolutely right, Terry. We've got a lot of customization in our SAP system, and it all came across perfectly. Yeah, so we saw all our customization when we took our models, so yeah.
Very good. Okay, anything else, Kathy?
Not over the Q&A console, no. Lindsay, one last chance. Anyone?
You have a question from the line of Bob Schaller.
Okay, go ahead, Bob. Hello?
Excuse me, Bob, your line is open.
Okay, thank you. We had used Saphir with the Peoplesoft application, and one of the high values we saw in that was being able to create complete data model of the subject areas, since there were something like 37,000 tables with that version. And Saphir was able to take the 27,000 that were not just system-related tables and produce data models. I joined a little bit late. I didn't know if you saw or if you demonstrated that ability or not.
Yeah, to a small degree we did, Bob. This is Terry. Just for time reasons, we created a small one, and then Jean had talked about it in her presentation. But I appreciate you bringing that up, and yes, that is correct. You can create some large, complex models out of that. So thank you.
Yes, especially with the as-is when discussions were coming up for 2B.
Very good. Okay, any other questions or comments?
There are no questions on the audio portion.
Okay. Kathy, any last words?
Honestly, no, beyond the fact that I just want to make it very obvious how appreciative we are of Jean and her time of sharing the success at her company. I do believe Sandhill Consultants has a published case study as well on their website. I encourage others to go and read a bit more about the success that she shared with you today. So, Jean, again, thank you very much on behalf of CA ERwin Modeling for taking the time to share your success with us. Operator, at this time, I think we can conclude today's call.
Thank you. This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.